You spent 4, maybe 6 years earning that degree. You paid for it with money, time, and a version of yourself that no longer exists. And now, quietly, without anyone naming it, that same degree might be the reason you feel stuck. Not because education is bad, but because of what you told yourself it meant about who you are. Let's start with the basics. A sunk cost is any investment you have already made that you cannot get back. Time, money, effort, gone. The sunk cost fallacy is what happens when those past investments start driving your future decisions, even when logic says you should change course. You see this everywhere. People staying in bad movies because they paid for the ticket, businesses funding failing projects because they already spent millions. And quietly, everywhere around us, people staying in careers they do not love because they spent years getting a degree that pointed them there. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent decades studying exactly this. His research showed that humans feel losses roughly twice as strongly as equivalent gains. That means the pain of abandoning what you already invested in feels bigger than the excitement of what you could gain by moving on. Now, apply that to education. You spent 4 years and tens of thousands of dollars on a law degree. Switching careers does not just feel risky. It feels like admitting that sacrifice meant nothing, that emotional math is not rational, but it is very, very human, and it traps a lot of talented people. Here is the thing that almost nobody says out loud. The money you spent on that degree is gone whether you use the degree or not. The years are behind you regardless of what you do next. The only question that actually matters is this: what is the best decision you can make starting today? There is a second layer to this that goes deeper than money. It is identity. When you spend years inside a specific discipline, you do not just learn content. You absorb a worldview. You start introducing yourself through your credentials. I am an engineer. I am a psychologist. I am a doctor. That identity is not neutral. It tells you what problems are worth solving, what conversations are worth having, and who counts as a peer. Over time, your degree stops being something you have and starts being something you are. And that shift, while it feels like confidence, can quietly become a cage. Adam Grant writes about this in his book, Think Again. He calls it being too attached to your past beliefs and identities to update them with new information. He argues that the most dangerous words in your vocabulary might be, I am a person who does this, because those words make changing feel like self-betrayal. Think about someone who studied economics for 6 years, then realizes they are genuinely passionate about education reform. Every step toward that new direction feels like a betrayal of the economist they were trained to be. Not because economics is wrong for them, but because identity is sticky, and prestigious identities are the stickiest of all. There is also social pressure at work here. Your family celebrated that degree. Your LinkedIn profile is built around it. Your colleagues know you as the specialist. Stepping away from that narrative does not just feel like a personal shift. It feels like rewriting a story that other people have already read and approved. And so people stay. Not because the path is right, but because leaving would require explaining yourself. And that explanation feels impossible when you have not fully sorted it out yourself. The degree becomes a script, and the script becomes a life, one that was chosen in your early 20s and never seriously revisited. Here is where the sunk cost fallacy moves from emotional to practical. The world is changing faster than any academic curriculum can follow. Fields that were growing when you enrolled might be shrinking by the time you graduate. Skills that were rare in 2010 might be automated by 2025. But here is what sunk cost thinking does. It makes you double down instead of adapt. You spent years becoming a specialist in a narrowing field, so instead of pivoting, you go deeper, you get a master's degree, then a certification, you add credentials to justify the credentials you already have. The ladder gets taller, but the wall might be wrong. This is not a hypothetical. Think about the thousands of people who spent years becoming print journalism specialists just as digital media restructured the entire industry, or those who trained in traditional retail management just before e-commerce reshaped the field entirely. Their skills were real, their training was serious, but the landscape moved. The problem is not that they learned the wrong things. The problem is that sunk cost thinking made it emotionally harder to acknowledge the shift and respond to it. Every acknowledgement felt like defeat, so they waited. And waiting in a changing market has a real cost that compounds quietly over time. Now, compare that to someone with what researchers call intellectual agility. This is the ability to update your thinking when new evidence arrives, to hold your expertise lightly and stay genuinely curious about adjacent fields. It does not mean knowing nothing deeply. It means knowing when to evolve what you know deeply. A tool worth exploring here is the concept of a skills audit. Rather than asking what your degree qualifies you to do, you ask what actual capabilities you have built: communication, analysis, problem structuring, systems thinking. These skills travel across fields. Your degree was the vehicle. The skills are what you actually own. Let's be clear about something. Breaking free from the sunk cost fallacy in education does not mean throwing your degree in the trash or starting over from zero. It means making decisions about your future based on where you want to go, not on defending choices you made years ago with incomplete information. The first shift is separating the credential from the decision. Ask yourself honestly, if I had no degree in this field and I was starting fresh today, would I choose this career? Not whether you can justify staying, whether you would actually choose this path with clear eyes and no historical weight pulling you back. The second shift is reframing what your education actually gave you. Not a job title, not a lane, a set of capabilities, a trained mind, a way of structuring problems. Those things are genuinely valuable and they transfer. The narrow application of that training is what you can release without losing anything real. The third shift, and this one takes real courage, is making peace with the explanation. Yes, some people will be confused. Some will ask why you spent years on something you are now moving away from. You do not owe anyone a perfect justification. You owe yourself an honest decision. Those are very different things. There's a concept called opportunity cost that belongs right here. Every year you stay in a path that does not fit is a year you did not spend building something that does. The sunk cost fallacy makes you look backward at what you spent. Opportunity cost asks you to look forward at what you're giving up by standing still. None of this is easy. Changing direction after years of specialization takes real work. You will face gaps in knowledge. You will likely start somewhere lower than your current title suggests you should be. That friction is real, not imagined, but it is temporary. The cost of staying misaligned compounds in a very different way. What the research consistently shows is that people who make deliberate pivots rather than passive drifts report significantly higher professional satisfaction within 3 to 5 years. Not because the transition was easy, but because they were finally making decisions based on the present, not defending the past. If you want to go deeper on the psychology behind all of this, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman is essential reading. It unpacks the cognitive patterns that make sunk cost thinking feel so rational when it is actually pulling us backward. Understanding the mechanism helps you catch it in yourself without judgment. Your degree is not a life sentence. It is a chapter, a real one, with real value built through real effort. But chapters end, and the most interesting people, professionally and personally, are the ones who keep writing instead of rereading the same page, hoping the story changes on its own. If this video made you think differently about your own path, share it with someone who might need it. Subscribe for more content on the psychology of decisions and career growth, and drop a comment below. What credential or past investment has been hardest for you to let go of? We read everything.